Okay, so I'm still reading from that book, Follow the Angels, The Path of Dedication, and commenting on it. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chaksuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanshakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So greetings from New Jersey, and I'll be going upstate New York, Super Soul Farm. Today, I'll go in first to the city and then meet Raghunath and proceed up there. I like Jamuna Jaya's point that COVID was like our Chaturmasya being a time where you can't work. The rainy season in India, and all the devotees would go to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they could stay in one place, Chare, Vritani, Harita, and dedicate themselves to God. So I kind of feel that about COVID myself. Now there's a little bit more moving around and things like that, a little bit more difficult for your sadhana bhajan. And you'll read about that in my next morning, Monday morning greetings, where I'm going to comment on something that Jai Jagannath said in one Bhagavatam class, that when we read Prabhupada's purports 50 years ago, we thought it was, but some people could think it was a bit polemical. But now it just seems like the news. Yeah. So let's read. And this is a section 2 of it. I don't know how it's really different, but what a question to begin with. And you could all actually meditate on that yourself. What is the substance of my inner search, my innermost search? Everyone has an innermost search. What is the substance of it? What do you really want? If you actually go into your heart and listen to the voices, what is your innermost want? Not intellectually, but from your heart. Is it to give yourself fully to God, or is to control and enjoy the world? And there are competing voices in the heart. And the whole purpose of bhakti is to come to the point where that voice, the innermost voice in your heart, is that voice that wants God and wants service to God. And when you can raise that voice into your heart until it is consuming the consciousness completely, I want Krishna. Until you come to, and when you come to that point, that's when you attract God's internal potency. And that's what the process of bhakti is about. It's a Tao Shraddha. It begins with some voice of appreciation, Tata Sadhu Sanga, some voice that my search is for what these people have, and I will be with them. The voice increases in the innermost search that I have to adopt the practices that can achieve this. The voice in the innermost search increases that I will give up those things that have no value to it. To the voice, I will become fixed in it. And at that point, there comes taste and spiritual addiction. So, and this is the mercy of Guru and Krishna. This is why we should be grateful. Brahmanda Brahmate Konya Bhagavan Jeev Guru Krishna Pasadi Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. Because we've been wandering from universe to universe, species of life to species of life, until by the mercy of Guru and Krishna, we get the Bhakti Lata Bij. That desire to search for this. Tasyeva heto priyate kovido talabhyate yad brahmatamu bhar. Tasyeva heto priyate ko. Those who are intelligent, they don't just wander here and there in this place and that place in the universe, and they go for that which has purpose, which is connected with the real you or the soul. And the way to get that purpose is to actually hear from sadhus and hear the Bhagavatam and practice Panchanga Bhakti. So we should feel Konya Bhagavan Jeev, that we are Bhagyavan, we are the fortunate Jeevs that have gotten this Bhakti Lata seed, Bij, this seed, this conception, this idea that life has purpose, life has meaning. And we know what it is, and we should try to attain it. So somehow or other, I always think, and think of my fortune and think of my brothers and how much more satisfied and peaceful I am in life. And then what is it? It's because I have faith, Shraddha. I have faith. I have conception of God and searching for God and meaning. And with that faith comes conception and understanding of how the world works. That's what our faith is. It's an experience, and it's an experience, and it's coordinated with a conception of life that makes sense of life based on this experience. So this is so important. What is the substance of my inner search, my innermost search? At last, I have come to that. Gauranga has given the fulfillment of my innermost demand. And obviously, the innermost demand has something to do, with our hearts being filled with not selfishness, but selflessness and love, and actually having faith in that as the fulfillment of the heart. So I've come to that. Gauranga has given the fulfillment of my innermost demand. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Doya Kora More Patita Pavana Hetu Tava. He's come for us. So I think the second section will be more in terms of the inner life of devotion. He is mine. Without him, no one should have any conception of life. The greatest thing is here, and if I cannot have it, what is my life worth? If you don't have a process to fill your hearts with love, if you don't have a process to imbibe that eternally, to imbibe that within the soul, to identify with a eternal identity, which is one of Jivera Sarupahoy, Krishnera Nityadas, eternally the servant of God. It's not dependent on this world, this body, the political situation, whether I die, whether I live. So the greatest thing is here, and if I cannot have it, what is my life worth? And we should think like this. What is our life worth without a spiritual process? And how much we should value it and prioritize it. That's why I always am blessing. I can see the participants. I'm always blessing or begging for mercy and blessing the participants, because this is what life's about, what's happening right here. If you want to get the good ideas that will change your mind, you have to hear from Shastra. We are suffering because of our mind. Our mind has too many troubling thoughts. And troubling thoughts, I've described this many times, a klishta vritti, troubling thoughts are attachments to things that degrade the consciousness, an aversion to things that elevate the consciousness. And good thoughts are things that elevate the consciousness. And bad thoughts and good thoughts are things that are averse to things that degrade the consciousness. And the mind has to be changed. We have to increase our good thoughts, the things that can elevate the consciousness and avoid the degradation of consciousness. And we have to become attached to those things, and we have to like those things. So how does this change in the mind? It comes from good ideas, and good ideas come from the Shastra. I would be better to die. I should have died long ago. And it's a fact. I don't know. What would my life? I can't imagine. What would my life be like without a spiritual conception? And I kind of somehow, I can't pinpoint the exact time, but I do have some kind of realization of meditating on this, that I forget how fearful life was when your conception was the body, and that the future will be the end of your existence. How much duality and fear you live with. And that duality and fear, that existential fear, is like a huge burden on your head. And I remember looking back just a few years after I came to Krishna consciousness, and I had this realization of the eternality of the soul and some purpose in life. And then later I reflected that the verse of the Bhagavad Gita perfectly suits this kind of thoughts that I was having of relief. Neha bikramanasho sti pratyavayo navidyate swalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bayat. Mahato bayat, the greatest fear. It saves you from the greatest fear. If I could not come in contact with such a valuable thing in this life, I would rather die. Janmiya se kani nahi maila. I should have died at birth. if I could not come to my eternal prospect, my inner fulfillment. I don't know how much more comment I can give on it, but he's just reiterating the same point. Nate vidu swartakatim na Vishnu. Nate vidu, I think this is Prahlad Maharaj. Nate vidu, they do not know. Nate vidu swartagatim hi Vishnu. That the swarta, artha means value. Swarta, the thing that is intrinsically of value. Nate vidu swartagatim hi Vishnu. They don't realize this. And then he quotes this verse from the CC. Paya manusha janma yena shuni gora guna. Hena janma tara vyarta hoile. Paya amrita duni pia visha kartapani. Jamiya ne keni nahima. Anyone who attains a human body but does not take to the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is baffled in his opportunity. Amrita Duni is a river, flowing river of the sweet nectar of devotional service. If after getting a human body, one drinks the water in a poison pit of material happiness, instead of the water of such a river, it would be better for him to have not lived, but to have died long ago. So, kind of heavy, but kind of true. If you look at the world and see what people who have lost any connection to, on the highest level, their connection to God, on another level, just their connection to a concept that there's truth, there's a tradition, there's a morality, there's even some people don't believe in God. At least used to people believe that there were absolute truths. And when you take that away, it disconnects one from our reality of the soul. And it becomes so depressing. I read a statistic that 6 out of 10 people now in America have anxiety attacks and depression 3 times a week. So that says a lot. And I guess many of them are going to rather die. Anyway, even if it's figuratively, it means what is life worth? And I hope that we have this conception. Another verse from the CC. Krishna Lilamrita Sar Tara Shata Shatadar Dasha Diki Vahi Yaha Hoite Sri Chaitanya Lila Hoy Sarovara Akshai Mano Hamsa Charaha Tahate. The pastimes of Krishna are the quintessence of all divine nectar, and Chaitanya Lila is an inexhaustible lake of that nectar, which is flowing in hundreds of streams, floods the hearts of the devotees in all directions. Therefore, O nectar-seeking friend, please let your mind swim in that lake like a regal swan. There's something there that's so far above any sensuous or egotistical, sensuous pleasure or egotistical pleasure. There's something there. There is a reality of happiness. There is a reality of nectar. And our realization is connected with Krishna, and it's connected with Krishna's pastimes, and it's connected with our sentiments towards those. And Chaitanya Lila is where that nectar is flowing. Because the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is to taste that nectar and to distribute it. We have a beautiful description in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. I often said, but I'm not going to really write it, but I I did have an idea of writing a book called The Mind of God, because there's so many descriptions in the Shastra where it describes what he's thinking, and the concept of Krishna's appearance, which is once every day in the day of Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma lives, his day is 1,000 yuga cycles. A yuga cycle, Satya, Treta, Dwarpa, and Kali, is 4,320,000 years. He lives 1,000 of those. That's 12 hours of Lord Brahma. And at the beginning of the 7th Manvatar, there in the day of Lord Brahma, this is just the technical things that some of you may like or appreciate or not. But in the day of Lord Brahma, there's 1,000 of these yuga cycles. And there are 14 manus, or universal kings. The 7th manu, and each of them live, if you divide 14 into 1,000, I think it's 72 or something. So they each live about 72 yuga cycles. So in the 7th manu, the end of the 7th manu's life would be noon in Lord Brahma, because he lives 14 yuga cycles, lives 14 manus. So in a day, so at the end of the 7th would be noon. This may be the best I've explained it so far. And in Vaivashvata Manu, in the 32nd yuga cycle, or the 28th yuga cycle. So anyway, I'll get lost now, but it's basically saying that Krishna will appear once in a day of Lord Brahma, just before midday. Just before midday. And then Chaitanya will appear after that. So why does he appear? Why does he appear? And it describes that that Krishna has this conception that I want to increase spontaneous love. There's reverential love and there's spontaneous love. Reverential love means God is majestic, and therefore there is obligation or duty in relationship to your service. There's fear of not doing it, and there's appropriate distance in the relationship. So that's a wonderful feeling of love of God. It's a beautiful thing. But more powerful is spontaneous love, where God not manifesting majesty, so there's no obligation, there's no fear, there's no distance. And that type of love is more forceful. So Krishna thinking, let me experience that type of love in the world, and in that way attract people to it and distribute it. So that's what the CC says, the mind of God. And then he appears as Krishna, but he fails, if you can say that, or he's incomplete in tasting that love, because he only tastes it from the object of that love, not from the perspective of the devotee. And I don't want to repeat this. I repeat this many times, but I'm going there and I'll explain it again, that love is an energy, And the same energy is experienced from two perspectives, being the object of that love, or the beloved, and the subject of that love, or the lover. And then somehow or other, the lover experiences the love more than the beloved. And therefore, although God was experiencing this spontaneous love, he realized that Srimati Radharani was enjoying it even more. So to become complete in that experience of love, God comes as Chaitanya. He also feels, I haven't sufficiently shared that love, because that love is in the heart of the devotees. And unless I take the position of the devotees, I can't share that love. So he comes in, and that's what he's explaining here, that Krishna has this sweetness, this inner search for God, but this inner search for the sweetness of God. He said the pastimes of Krishna are the quintessence of all divine nectar, because it's the highest love, and it's universal love, and it's the Sarup Shakti, the internal potency of God. And Chaitanya Lila is an inexhaustible lake of that nectar, because he's the one that has it, and he's distributing it. And it's flowing in hundreds of streams and floods the hearts of all devotees in all directions. Therefore, O nectar-seeking friend, please let your mind swim in that lake. And therefore, Narottam Das Thakur says that when one dives deep into the Sankirtan pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he winds up on the ocean of the shore of Radha Krishna's pastimes. So it's such a beautiful and imploring us. And I think this is so important. This is what I was meditating on, that a lot of us are in situations where we have to change, not either change the situation or change how we deal with the situation. And a lot of times there's some risk involved, but you take risk according to the benefit you will get from it. So to affirm the benefit that we get from Krishna consciousness, we have to hear about it. We have to be inspired about it. Otherwise, that faith, that conception of the benefit, it will recede. That's Vrindavan, that's Govardhan, that's festivals, that's kirtan, that's hearing classes. We have to understand how important it is. Otherwise, we won't make the sufficient sacrifices to attain it. These two scriptural references reveal the extraordinarily wonderful characteristics of our goal in Krishna. Our goal in Krishna is of such an extraordinary nature. The devotees give descriptions in different ways, but without that goal, one should not live. The wholesale dealer selects the choicest commodities for promotion when approaching new customers. The proprietor is astonished by the choice. He says, "You have presented well these most valuable things of mine. I was not even conscious that such things were mine. You have taken so many refined things from my storehouse. Were they in my store? Your choice makes me more valuable, infinitely more valuable. You have found such beautiful things of mine. I cannot but feel proud by your touch, by your connection. These beautiful things have been discovered in me." So the analogy is very, very beautiful. It's like someone who has a a storehouse, and maybe he's a retailer, and then someone comes, and the wholesaler picks things for promotion, and then they sell well, and they have so much value, and then the person says, I didn't realize this. I didn't realize what value is there. So he's saying that Krishna's the proprietor. Krishna has this wealth, and then God has this wealth, and then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has distributed wholesale. Priti vichi achi yati nagaradi gram. He's distributed it. And in distributing it, then even God is realizing what is the value. By your touch, these beautiful things have been discovered. So this is kind of a beautiful glorification of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Namo Maha Badanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gora Shusheta. Namo Maha Badanyaya, he is the most magnificent, magnanimous. Namo Maha Badanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate, because he's giving this Krishna Prema. This is the goal. Prema Pumarta Mahan. The thing has the greatest value is love, the highest love. Twasmin Parama Prema Rup. The form of the highest love is to God. And to experience it, we have to commit ourselves to the process to excavate the heart. So I'm reading this, and it's a challenge, and it's a challenge to me. I'm thinking, yes, don't just sit around, work. Get this bhakti. It's the most valuable thing. It's the innermost search, the substance of my innermost search. And we have faith because we have experienced by God's grace what a drop of this is. So that we have a goal and we can make ourselves qualified to have it. But somehow we get lost in some ephemeral goals, some ephemeral desires, some misplaced faith that this will satisfy me and this will make me happy. And it becomes a realization. We kind of see that, but we're seeing an illusion. But we're convinced. Krishna's obligation towards Radharani, the wholesale dealer, is such. Partial dealers come from different groups, but Radharani is the wholesale dealer of all the commodities available in Krishna's store. So he's saying that, yes, God consciousness is there and it's very wonderful. And people give the wonder of God, the majesty of God, the sweetness of God, the compassion of God. And people are experiencing this, and we respect those people and we worship those people. And we should pray to become with those people. But he says we can have more. Because what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna in the mood of Radha. Radha, Aniya Radito Nunam. Aniya Radito Nunam. Aniya. There's no one who is worshipped as much. Aniya Radito. None other has worshipped Krishna so much. It's his own internal potency. And in Krishna's pastimes, the potencies are Sandini, Samvit, and Ladini. Ladini holds the highest position because of complete self-surrender. So it's described that God has three potencies. He has an existential potency by which things exist. That's called Sandini. He has a knowledge-giving potency, samvit, by which there is cognizance and knowledge. And he has a ladini shakti. He has a pleasure potency by which there is happiness. But happiness holds the highest position because our existence and our knowledge are for happiness, and God's existence and knowledge are for happiness. And this is what Aristotle pointed out, and I quote that sometimes because it has such a simple profundity in it. He said, the goal is happiness. It's not the means for anything else. And if someone challenges, no, this is the goal, Aristotle will refute that by saying, no, that's just the means for happiness. So here the same point is making. God has existence and God has knowledge, but what is the purpose of it? The purpose is happiness, and happiness is love. And therefore, rasa vaisaha, the ultimate reality is this rasa, it's this intensified love, which everyone is meant to participate in. But you have to be cooperative, otherwise you cause a disturbance. And we're so hesitant to be cooperative because we want our own center. We want to be self-centered. So here you have it. You want to be self-centered? Okay, here you have the world. How does that feel? How does it feel that we're self-centered? Even for the people with the most wealth and the most power, how does it feel? Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, how do you think it feels? I'm staying here and I went to see the deities. And there was a book put together by Jayadev, I'm staying in his house. And there was a picture on it of our friend Bali from Gita Nagari. And he's offering some lamp or something. And the joy in his heart. The joy in his heart. That the goal is happiness, not things. Things can help you get happiness. But the people who don't want to be cooperative and want to be self-centered, because love means cooperation. Universal love means cooperating with the universe. If you don't want to be cooperative and you want to be self-centered, then and I just thought, those people don't have anything over Bali. They don't have anything over Bali. Simple man with devotion. Happiness is a heart filled with devotion. And that's God's universe. He has an existential potency by things exist. We have a potency by which things exist. There's a potency by which one can understand things. And we have a potency by which we can understand things, a cognitive potency. But what is it for? And that's what's being mentioned here. Thinking, feeling, and willing. Willing is Sandini. Thinking is Sambit, and feeling is Ladini, pleasure potency. Ordinary, we think that feeling is last of all, but no, it is the first. It's the last because it's the goal, but it's the first because it's the most important. We manage things. It's important. We possess things. It's important. We know things. It's important. And the purpose is so that we can feel things. The purpose is so that we can actually have a heart of selflessness and devotion and satisfaction and contentment. That's the goal. Feeling is first. Feeling, real feeling, has been given such a high position. Feeling controls us all. We are all searching, and feeling commands us. We think feeling is the result. No, feeling commands everything. First feeling, then thinking, then willing. Generally, the karmis, the fruit of workers, give the upper hand to willing, to willpower. And the gyanis concentrate on thinking. We command thy will, so we hold the high position. But feeling is the basis of everything, controlling everything. That is so. We have to understand the position of feeling. And what is a position of feeling? The position of feeling is bhakti. It's the process of bhakti yoga. And when we have that feeling, that objective, then we can adjust the other things. Okay, kind of interesting. Do not approach directly. So it's going to be a warning now. I guess this is good philosophy. You explain something and now you're going to make sure people don't misunderstand it. Our Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada, asked that we keep Radharani in great reverence. On your head, over your head, don't be bold enough to approach directly. Pujala Raga Pata Gaurava Bhangi. Try to keep her and her group at a respectful distance above your head. Do not rush towards that position. It is not cheap. How valuable. They are for those situated in Ragmad who worship Krishna in this way, the way of love. So, yeah, I often talked about spiritual prejudice, that the goal is Krishna's pastimes. And Prabhupada gave us the 10th canto, the Krishna book, right at the beginning, but he also couched it in a context so that we can understand it. Otherwise, we will judge those things by our experience of something that's similar but different. The concept of prejudice is what? That you have an experience and you generalize it in a way that it no longer applies. And that happens with Krishna's pastimes. If it's not presented and couched within the proper understanding, people will understand and relate to those things in a very superficial way, and therefore not be able to enter into those things in the proper way. So therefore, Srila Bhakti, and this is historically what happened, and Srila Bhakti Siddhanta warns to have the proper understanding. Aham sarvasya prabhavo matas sarvam pavartate iti bhutva bhajanti mam buddha bhava samavata. I am the source of the material and spiritual world. The wise who know this engage in my devotional service. In his deep trance, Mahaprabhu experienced Vrajalila and expressed his ecstatic feelings. The Sahajiyas try to imitate these things by their mundane mind. They attempt to experience that Leela through their imagination, but that is not possible. If there is any imitation, only offenses will be created. Those offenses will be recorded in the circle of the examiners of the upper quarter, and they will give a stamp of disqualification. The imitators are criminal and unfit. Imitation will be held against us and hamper our future progress. We must be very careful not to commit offenses aparad. It is better to be a newcomer with a fresh introduction than to have a criminal record. We must be very, very careful in our quest for the highest objective of our eternal life. Our Guru Mahārāja Śrīla Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur has especially given this caution, and he attracted us to the line of exclusive devotion. Yeah. I sometimes actually, I speak on Krishna Lila now almost exclusively, but I'm very cognizant of what Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said. And I always made that statement, more important than speaking the truth is having the truth understood. And to have the truth understood, people have to have the proper frame of reference and context for it. And then there's an experience of it. And the experience of it is not what the forms necessarily correspond to in the material world. There's boy-girl form in the material world, and there's boy-girl form in the spiritual world. But even though there's external similarity and intensity, the consciousness is so much different. The consciousness. So to understand Radha Krishna's pastimes properly, you have to have the proper frame of reference and understanding and somewhat of the proper feeling. And I describe that when we're in Vrindavan and we go to holy places and we speak of Krishna's pastimes and we just do parikram and we go around. There's such a deep feeling. And when you have that deep feeling, then when you hear those pastimes, they will communicate to you that feeling rather than something mundane. So what he's warning for is if you just approach them, not under the proper guidance, not hearing from the proper people, not in the proper mood, then you won't actually be able to understand them. You'll just see them externally. And there's another term that I coined in this called spiritual autism. And there's a spectrum. But one aspect of that kind of mental challenge is that you don't understand the mind. The body expresses different emotions. And I've read this. There were actually people studied this. They studied the face and they isolated 360 muscles that correspond to different feelings that one expresses. I mean, even if you shut off the sound with me speaking, you'd have some idea of what I'm thinking just by the expressions. You know when I'm enthusiastic or whatever. So what happens is in a certain type of mental disability, then one is unable to correlate the external expressions with what they are expressions of. And therefore, it's very difficult to socially navigate in the world. So in the same sense, and of course, Prabhupada didn't ban the gopis, he said, he made that very clear. It's just approaching in the same sense. If someone very cheaply wants to approach these things without the proper mood of devotion, the proper mood of service, the proper mood of humility, then not only won't they understand what the pastimes of Radha and Krishna and the intensity, what it actually means, they'll misunderstand it. So Srila Bhakti Siddhanta was very careful because of the history of this, that Radha Krishna pastimes simply became understood and propagated as something that was mundane, sexual, and somehow could be imitated in this world. The Krishnadas Kaviraj describes it as the difference between metal and gold. If you think they're the same thing simply because they're metal, You actually haven't understood them. They're both metal. There's a similarity, but there's a difference. So Radha Krishna pastimes and pastimes in this world, there's a similarity, but there's a difference. And you actually have to understand both the similarity and the difference. That's why it says that if you're too detached or too attached, you really can't enter deeply into bhakti. Because if you're too detached, you'll see these pastimes as undesirable. And if you're too attached, you'll see these pastimes as desirable in the wrong way. So it's a very beautiful process. And we have to hear Krishna's pastimes to actually to have a goal and to become detached in the world. Prabhupada gave Krishna book, and we're representing them and we're speaking about them. But we also come in a line that warns us to make sure when you talk about these pastimes that people have the proper context to understand them. And if they have the proper context to understand them, they'll have the proper qualification to feel them. And if they feel them, they'll understand that it's quite different than something in the material world. Although there's a similarity too. I'll tell that story where I came to see one of Prabhupada's godbrothers, and he was really in the mood of Bhakti Siddhanta, and he understood that me and my friends were interested in these things, and he looked at us. He said, "You want to understand Raganuga Bhakti?" He said, and then he said, in the material world, said people don't even understand the love of a mother for their child. And then a monkey was on the ledge and grabbed a banana from the child. He said, that's your concept. And then he described in India, he said, I knew one man. He had 10 sons, 100 grandchildren. He was 75 years old. Had 1,000 people working for him, but he would only take food from the hand of his 95-year-old mother. He said, but without understanding that love, how will you understand the love of Mother Yasoda? So there's a similar in the difference. And therefore the bhakta is not too detached or too attached in the wrong way. Too detached, he'll have no appreciation for those forms of love and devotion. And too attached, he'll misunderstand them. Anyway, I went off in a particular way, but Jamuna Jaya is not here. So anybody else would like to share some comment? Bhakti Devi, thank you.
Would it be safe to say that when Chaitanya appeared in order to experience the transcendental love of Sri Radha, that he also wanted to experience the search for the self, the search for himself?
Well, the pastime is, part of himself, because God is Radha and Krishna. God is Shaktiman, the possessor of energy, and God is Shakti, the energy. So the full conception of God is Radha and Krishna. If you just have Krishna, it's like a rose without color, without fragrance, without form. So Krishna is Radha Krishna. That's the complete form, because otherwise God can't be the supreme enjoyer, because he must experience love to the fullest. And to experience love to the fullest, you must be both experience the love of the devotee for God. You have to experience the love of the devotee, but you have to experience love as the object of love and as the beloved and the lover. So God, to be complete in his enjoyment, then he has to take the position. So he comes to search, to become a devotee. And in one sense, it parallels to our search, because we're searching for ourselves, our true selves. What we really are is we're servants of God. And that's not just an intellectual thing, that's a feeling. We're lovers of God. That's who we are. That's what we're meant to be. So we're searching for that. So Chaitanya was also searching for that. So when we say that he was searching for himself, he wasn't searching for himself as God. He was searching for himself as a devotee.
Okay, thank you, Mahārāja.
That makes sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay, anybody else like to?
Hare Krishna, Mahārāja.
Yeah, Haribo?
I'm Gopi Gita here. I'm sorry. I think my camera has a very bad thing. I wanted to notice how interesting is universal love means cooperate with universe. I liked it a lot.
What's that?
Universal love means cooperate with the universe.
Oh, yeah, we have to cooperate with the universe. Yes.
Thank you for class, Mahārāja.
Okay, thank you, Gopi Gita. That was a psychedelic presentation of you.
Yes, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened.
And you're a professor of computers.
Yes, very well for me.
You were able to create that effect that normally we wouldn't be able to do. Okay, anybody else?
Hare Krishna, Mahārāja.
Rachel, okay, great. See, when will you be up at Super Soul?
I'll be coming up on Wednesday. So
Oh, okay, great. And you'll stay till the 11th.
I'll stay till the 11th. Yep. So I'll be there for a week.
Oh, okay. Then I don't even need to bring up anything.
No,
Either.
I can bring you an Instapot. I just won't be there till Wednesday.
No, don't bring it because you'll be there. What do I need it for then? Right? It doesn't, it's everything's settled. I know it's fine.
Okay.
No need.
Okay, great.
Everything is fine then. It's simple. We'll
Great.
work it out. It's easy. Okay.
Okay. I do have a question about this lecture. Can I ask you a question about this lecture?
You can.
Okay, so you spoke a lot. Well, to me, what I heard a lot, probably because this is something I'm going through right now, is the purpose of bhakti is happiness, and happiness is love, and philosophy or knowledge is just meant to get you there. But then you talked about how first you want to feel with the heart, and then you come in with the mind. But I feel like so often, like if I understand something very well and thoroughly, then I can feel my heart opening up to it. It's like I need my mind first to make sense of it, and then I can feel my heart. Are you suggesting that, like,
right? Yeah, great. I think you asked a great question, because I think that was the statement that Srila Śrīdhara Maharaj made, that feeling is first, but generally thinking, willing, feeling, that's generally the process. So then it's really a question of what did he mean? And I think it's something like this. I think it's aham sarvasya prabhavo matas sarvam pavartate iti bhutva bhajanti mam buddha bhava sama. I am the source of the material and spiritual worlds. The wise who know this can engage in my devotional service. So knowledge is first. Then tesham satati yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam tadami buddhi yogam tvam yena mama. And then for one who worships me with faith and devotion, I give the knowledge by which they can come to me. So I think there's some preliminary knowledge that's there. And then as you advance in Krishna consciousness, when your heart and your desires are not, when your heart is of that love of Krishna, then your feeling comes first. But if now our feeling comes first, what will that mean? Our feeling will mean our material desires. Therefore, even at an advanced platform, it's called Ajata Rucha Raganuga Bhakti. Before you have ruchi, how do you practice spontaneous devotion? Well, he says, well, you can keep a spiritual objective in mind, but you have to keep yourself under the Shastra and under the rules. Because if you don't keep yourself under the guidance of the Shastra and the rules, then you'll just follow the material heart, which is full of desires. But I think what he's expressing there, and I'd have to look at it again, I don't look at these things beforehand, and I probably should have looked at this one beforehand. But if I would say what he's probably saying is, and I'm glad you brought this out, is that ultimately on the path of bhakti, we should be led by this strong desire to serve Krishna in a particular relationship. And that should guide everything we should do. Because we love Krishna, therefore we want, we think of how to serve Krishna nicely. It may be the same things, for example. It may be you do exactly the same things, but the impetus for it, like, for example, we may read, we may study, we should follow, we should do this, we should do that. We go to Mangal Artik, okay, because it's good for us, etc. But at a particular point, and Prabhupada mentions this in the Nectar of Devotion, at a particular point, it'll be spontaneous. We'll want to wake up, we'll want to serve, we'll want to do this, we'll want to do that. It'll be spontaneous. So, and at that point, the feeling of a loving Krishna will guide everything. So I think that's what he was talking about, and not, when we're trying to cultivate Krishna consciousness, and in other words, we have to come to that point. But we should come to that point. We shouldn't just stay at the point that everything is obligatory and duty and understanding. We should come to that point. Thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you. Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, you can.
You've also talked about the importance of understanding Krishna Lila from like a deeper perspective, and not just through our material context. I was in a class at the temple at Krishna Balaram, and there was the speaker was talking about a particular book that explains the lessons that you learn in Krishna book. And I guess it made me think, like, I would love to study Krishna book from that, because when you read it, it's like beautiful stories, but I would like to make sure I'm really understanding it.
I don't know what book he's talking about, but I would say that's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Do you have my Waves of Devotion?
Yeah.
I would say that's the book that explains what's happening. But I'd also say that Prabhupada's Krishna book is, couches everything in the philosophical understanding. But to understand the emotions and the feelings of it, the science of that is the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which I explained in terms of Waves of Devotion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else like to say hello?
Mahārāja, I have one question. What book were you reading from this morning?
It's called Follow the Angels by Bhakti Rakṣaka Śrīdhara Maharaj. Follow the Angels. Okay. Okay, Henry, we'll see you soon, right?
In June.
That's soon? Well, no, that's too long. It's too long.
It is too long, way too long. And thank you for a wonderful class as usual. My whole Saturday night is thinking about getting to bed early so I can get up early and enjoy your nice class.
You're such a perfect gentleman. And Rachel, Henry will come up also to the Super Soul for that retreat, if you haven't met Henry before. Rachel is helping Raghunath now manage it. But Henry's the one that initially put shelter on the road. I remember that. Okay. Okay, Haribo, Henry. Thank you. Good.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Where are you?
Here.
I can't see you.
Our house.
Okay, how do you
Oh,
go?
we're at home.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I thought my camera was on, Maharaj.
Okay, now it's on. Nice to see both of you.
Nice to see
Good
you,
to see
Maharaj. Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Nice class. I wanted to ask you to explain more. Maybe I didn't get a proper understanding of what is spiritual autism.
What I was explaining is, and I don't want to insult anybody that's dealing with this or deals people, but there's a spectrum of mental challenges where you can't understand a person's mind. How do you understand a person's mind? By their expressions. If you ever deal with someone, just see how much you understand, not just by what they say, but by their facial things. And when you don't have that, you really can't understand the person because you can't understand their mind. And some people have that challenge. I know one person, as a child, they walked into one of my classes and, they're not even aware that people are upset or they can't actually see people and understand their mind. So in the same things, when we actually approach Krishna's pastimes, we can't see their minds. Their minds are full of love and devotion, and we think of it as maybe a mundane thing. It's boy and girl. We don't understand their minds. That's what I was saying. So we have a kind of spiritual lack of understanding what the actions of Radha and Krishna mean, what they're thinking by them, because we correspond them to the similar actions of our relationships in the world. Thank you for asking. Is that a little bit clearer?
Yes, Maharaj, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for asking, because I didn't know I was going to get into such a deep subject today. It was very... Okay. Anybody else like to say hello?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, it's Missy. Thank you so much for class. There were so many gems in this class that if I were a lady that was into tattoos, I'd want half the things that you said all over my body.
Well,
I mean, just even from the way you started class, I was like trying to write copious notes down, and I just thought it was so beautiful. You said the thing that has the greatest value is love, and to experience it, we have to commit ourselves to the process to excavate the heart. I just thought that was
really
so beautiful.
Missy,
Yes.
will I see you today?
Probably. I'm trying to get out of subbing a class and putting that on somebody else.
Okay.
So I'm going to try.
Okay, I'm going to try to come into today because I'm supposed to meet Raghunath to go up. Okay, anybody else?
And thank you, Mahārāja.
Hare Krishna Gumaraj, Tota Gopinath here.
Kishore Radha and Priya.
Wow, Haribo.
Haribo.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you very much for the
Haribo.
class. Yavat Sundari.
good.
Yeah,
Very nice kitchen.
yeah, thank you. Srila Radhika couldn't join today. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Great. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for a wonderful class. Very wonderful class today.
Thank you, Isabel. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Good. Okay. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
And Broja, thank you for class.
Thank you for class.
I'll see you soon.
Looking forward to it.
I'll see you soon. I better pack now. Okay.
Okay.
Haribo.